My wife and I moved to the south of France. We bought what's called a Maison de Maitre, and that just kind of means in French, master's house. We're in the edge of a village. It's not quite like a chateau. It's not in the big fields in the middle of nowhere, but we wanted the kind of be able to walk to the pub or be able to walk and do things in our little village. So that's why we chose to do this. It's a eight-bed house, and it has a really good sized garden for France. Uh, if you're in a village, it's pretty rare to have a large garden, so I decided to make it kind of semi-formal and put down pathways and patios around. We installed the pool, and there was a fountain that already existed, and there was a greenhouse that already existed when we got here, ancient, or from the 1850s. So we decided to put down concrete on these pathways, and then we're going to travertine over the top. I just thought I would share some of the things that I found after pouring 46 tons of concrete on my own, American tons, over 18 days, this sort of end of this summer. I didn't do 18 days all in a row. They were broken up by bad weather. They were broken up by me having to set forms, and then basically by being pretty sore. I ended up using quite a bit of Advil or ibuprofen. One of the most important things is to be in good physical health, reasonably good physical health. I mean, I'm 50 now. Things take a little longer than, when I was my 20s, but you can still do it. So one of the most important tips, and the single most important thing that I learned, is when you go to pick these bags up, because what we did is we had bags of sand gravel mixed together, which they call a melange, and then we also had bags of cement. And bags of cement go into both mortar and concrete. And the difference between mortar and concrete is one's only got sand, which is the mortar, and then the concrete has sand and stones. So the biggest thing I can recommend is, you've been told as a kid, bend with your knees, bend with your knees. Well, it's actually really important, because when you're doing 20 and 30 of these bags a day, it adds up. It gets really painful, especially when you get older like me, but 50 now, you feel it. I'm not like I was in my 20s, but even if you're not, and you want to try to do this much concrete, what you need to do is hold it really close to you. So what I would do is I would, for example, have a bag. I would cut the end. I will go down, get it as close to your stomach as possible, and then lift it like that. It's important to keep it tight like that. You're going to get dirty. You're going to get covered in concrete. Wear some old clothes, but that's the key. And you walk over and you dump it in the mixer. Don't be doing this kind of thing where you're picking it up like this. That's so bad for your back. Or just the thing like that. It's horrible. So yeah, be smart with your bags, because whether it's pre-mixed concrete or like hundreds of bags of pre-mixed concrete, we've got the sand and gravel in it, or just bags of cement, you need to be thinking about that, because you won't last. There's no way you're going to get through a lot of concrete. One other thing I would recommend to do, which probably a lot of people would say is overkill, is I filled buckets. When you fill buckets, you're going to get the exact amount you want. Your mix is going to be the same. You're going to get consistency. So yes, I could just shovel it in, but you learn, even filling buckets, every time you shovel, you're off by a bit. I did some math behind it and kind of calculated I was within like less than 5% difference per pour, which is pretty good for an amateur and someone who's just a DIY guy. So what I expect is what went down. I didn't make things with too much cement. I didn't make things with too much gravel or sand. If you measure it out every time, especially when you get tired, especially at the end of the day when your brain is just fried because you've been doing it for 8 or 9 hours, a bucket will save you, because you just have to remember 5 buckets, blah, put in some cement, 5 buckets of this, do this. It's just such an easier thing to repeat and have a process that you can easily remember for when you get a bit foggy at the end of the day. And the next tip is wash your tools, especially with a cement mixer or a concrete mixer. Basically what you want to do, it doesn't matter about the outside as much unless there's big blobs of concrete or whatever on there, but basically just focus on keeping the inside good. I see so many people like throwing bricks in and gravel. The day after, trying to break it up and loosen the concrete that's in there, that might work. But mine, no, you can't eat out of it, but it's really tidy. I don't go more than maybe 4 hours without giving it a wash. And all I do is I put the wheelbarrow underneath, hose it out, and then take the wheelbarrow out and dump it. I have a tarp underneath for slopping stuff. That saves the floor as well. Just try to keep everything tidy, because otherwise you're going to have to replace it. Another thing I'd recommend doing is using bonding mortar. So what you do basically is you get a jug of like a resin. It's called a bonding resin used with concrete. And when you pour it multiple times and you start and stop and start and stop, everywhere you stop, when you pour new concrete, it doesn't connect up. Unless the concrete is still wet and mushable, it will never properly connect. So it'll be a crack basically. So to make it stronger, it's not as good as if you didn't, but because you're going to be trying to do it over multiple pours on your own over multiple days, you want to do your best to make sure that connection is solid so that it doesn't crack. You should put rebar in it, but in addition to that, in addition to having kind of a rougher surface when you end the day, by adding in some bonding mortar, and bonding resin basically is what sticks it all together, that will help that connection be stronger. So I did that. I basically would, first thing I would do is I would spread that on, and I just use gloves. It doesn't have to be pretty, you're never going to see it. And I used rubber gloves to make sure that I didn't chew up my hands. And I went into a bucket after I mixed it, slapped it on, continued with my pour. That's all you have to do. And it just helps a little bit. Another important tip is how you shovel. So you could use a really long one like this, and hold it kind of far away and shovel like this and bring it over, and then you're swinging this stuff into here, and it puts a lot of stress on your shoulders and arms and elbows and joints, especially when you get older. And just by doing that and then trying to get it in over here, whether it's the ground or not, it depends. But if you can get all the stuff closer to you, if you swish down, and instead of using this kind of shovel, I use a short one. This guy here. So by using a shorter one, bending and going like that, it made life a lot easier. I don't have to go as far. I'm not stressing my joints out. And it's, better for you. Another thing is the way people shovel. I see so many people doing this kind of thing, slamming it in there, going up, flipping it over. This kind of motion is just brutal on your joints. When you get older, I mean, I don't know if you're trying to impress someone, pick up chicks by how, strong you are. I don't know. All I know is if you do it a softer and focus on, it'll be harder initially, but if you focus on your muscles and not impacting on your joints, your back, your lower spine, and doing more of a scooping motion, what I actually found it worked really well and got the most on a shovelful was if you kind of do this motion. Do this, and just like when you canoe, you use a J stroke, that kind of motion. Come down, up, and I get a ton in that. And my joints didn't hurt. Your muscles will initially hurt, but they'll heal up quicker, and you won't pull anything. You won't, you'll get stronger instead of just injuring yourself and having to stop for 3 days. So don't slam it in there. You're not going to impress anyone. I just see so much of it I don't understand, because I would initially kind of think, oh, this is how you do it. It doesn't work. You will break down. Another thing I'd recommend is getting the right tools. You're going to spend a little bit more money, but for me, instead of using a big 2x4, I got one of these aluminum, I don't know, they call them rules here, and it is so light. When you're pulling against you, it's really heavy when you do this on the top of the concrete. Basically, the lighter it is, the easier it is. It can flex, it doesn't matter. It's just got to be good this way. It doesn't matter if it bends that way or whatever. But this was a great purchase. It's saved my arms and back when I'm doing that. This is a concrete rake. I would recommend getting one of these also, especially if you're on your own. because you don't have a lot of time, especially when the weather is warm. And basically this will allow you to spread around all the concrete very easily and get into the nooks and crannies and do stuff like that. I also purchased one of these guys, which is basically a float, and you would push it in one direction and then you twist the handle and it tilts the other way and you pull it back, and you would do this over a large area. It worked well. I'd recommend getting one, but not if you've got a large area, not if you're doing that on your own. If you're trying to spread this on your own, you're not going to generate enough concrete to be able to knead it. So what I tended to do was I would rake it out, I would smooth it out with the rule, the aluminum rule, and then I would use just a hand float as far as I could reach to smooth it out. Now, if I am going to be doing travertine tiles over top, if I was doing a good surface, I would probably focus on getting something more like that, so it's completely smooth, and then either you broom it or do something that's, do the edges and make it all pretty. I didn't have to worry about that because that wasn't my focus. I just simply covering it up with tiles anyways. But yeah, this worked well for me. If you've got a huge area, probably a garage or like a shed platform, if you don't need to worry about it too much, no one's going to see it, then you could probably get away with this because you can't pour a large area anyways. So you're only doing little strips. That makes sense. Another thing I found was that it's really mostly mental to be able to do this much concrete. You get bored, you slow down. If you can give yourself games like trying to figure out the optimum route of, if I'm mixing over here and the cement mixer's over there and getting my thing there, which is the quickest way, timing yourself, trying to get your pours down as quick as possible. Just counting things, make goals. That's kind of why it's nice to have a daily total. So what I did, just to keep track of all the stuff that I was working on, and at the end of the day, I would count up all the bags I did, and I wrote a marker on the front of one of the bags to say, this is what I've done. So there was like 13 this day, 23, 3, etc., like that. And that's how I managed to keep track of how much over the last over those 18 days I managed to do. Because by the end of it, you're really tired and you really don't feel like, you're mentally not the best. Yeah, so basically just try to keep your mind active with whether it's music or the radio's on, you're listening to a podcast, whatever you can do. Mind you, you're going to get all dusty and you're going to get all covered in cement. So you probably want to have a cheap set of earphones on or headset on or whatever. But if you can keep your mind busy, it makes the day go so much faster, and then you don't focus on just how much work it is. You don't focus on how sore you're getting, and you don't focus on how boring it really is. Another tip I have is don't breathe in the cement. It's an alkaline, it's not really good for your system. It burns up your hands. What's it going to do to your lungs? Yes, it's not banned or anything like that, but I think it's just for the best not to be breathing it in if you can. So I know no one likes the M word right now after COVID, but I'm sure you've got a lot of these hanging around. So I would recommend you keep one in your pocket, and when you go to dump that cement in, and or your bag of concrete, and all that dust starts coming up, make sure you've got a mask on because you don't want to be breathing it in. This isn't the best mask to be using. You should really have like a proper breather one. But what I do is I kind of do a two thing. I put this on and then I hold my breath just in case I forget to breathe in or do something stupid. I've got a little extra protection on it. But you just avoid breathing that stuff, because I know when I first started, I got a bit in my lungs, and it was like the next day I was kind of coughing a lot and stuff like that. It's not good for you. So another thing that I do is I use a fan. So I have an old fan that I've always kind of used for when I'm working in the house, whether it's, just because it's hot or whatnot, and I'm chiseling concrete or doing something. I put that on me, it blows cool air. Simply by aiming it up and over the cement mixer, it creates a flow. So all that air blows that way, and it stays away from me when I'm dumping it in. And as soon as you get the water and enough water in there to get the cement to kind of turn from powder into the cement, it's not a problem. But that initial big poof of dust is what you want to try to avoid. And finally, and most importantly, I would recommend you not listen to anyone telling you you can't do it. Unless it's a health professional saying, hey, you're not healthy enough to do this. But if your friends or whatever say, oh, you're crazy, you know, don't take this on your own, you can do it. It's all a mental game. It's all about being strong. It's all about just deciding you can do it and you'll make it. Just make sure you listen to your body. If you feel aches and pains, take a day off. Otherwise, enjoy pouring, because it was great to be able to pour 46 tons in that amount of time. Cheers. Thanks for watching.